Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Gnomoria. Unfortunately, while recording, my voice got erased somehow, so I'm going to have to be doing a voiceover. Well, in between episodes, I set up some tables and chairs in our great hall. This is just to add a little bit more value, give our gnomes a place to sit down with their food and actually eat rather than eating on the ground. I set up a mine to extract some more marble while leaving some of the supports, because a mine without supports, it's a hole in the ground, but it has a roof, so obviously the roof would come crashing down on top of our gnomes, at least in reality. But we are going to be adding a little bit more work to our great hall, so that should attract some more nomads. I'm hoping that we get a few more to allow us to specialize our tasks, get a little bit more work done. Unfortunately, I already know what happens because I've played through this episode, but I'll try and keep that a secret. We still have 13 gnomes in our population, which it allows our work to get done, but it doesn't allow the work to get done in a timely fashion or in the order that I would prefer to get done in. So, unfortunately, we'll just have to live with that for now. I would really like to deconstruct these two workstations of lumber and masonry, and the reason is because I can set them up. Oh, looks like our kingdom worth is sitting right at 3518, which in this episode I actually do get to that 5,000 mark that I was talking about earlier on another episode. Looks like the mining work is getting done fairly quickly, which is nice. Our gnomes don't seem to be having too much trouble with it. Oh, monitor lizard has been spotted. And later on, we actually start taking on the monitor lizards, and we start using them as a source of meat and for bones. Luckily, our squads aren't trying to attack just yet because we're not quite there in terms of our training. We still need to train a little bit more. But we do have two squads training various times of the day, just kind of giving them a break in the middle of the day. But it does allow us to see people as soon as they get into the fort rather than seeing them while they're in the middle of it and has already killed a few of our gnomes, so that's nice. Eventually I'd like to expand the kingdom to where the Great Hall can expand out into the black area. That way we can add kingdom work to it, plus to give our gnomes a little bit of option in terms of their eating location. And that music means we have our first raid, our first official raid from the goblins. They finally found out where Devil Dagger is. They've heard the rumors, and now we're just kind of trying to find where they're at. Unfortunately, it seems that they've already gotten from the edge of the map to wherever they are. And it just so happens that they are right outside our door. They are right on the corner of it. They're coming in now. I'm going to zoom in and take a look at them. First one's just a goblin raider. He doesn't have any equipment, so that's nice. The last one is just a regular goblin. He doesn't have any equipment. But the middle goblin, he's a fighter, and therefore he has some kind of equipment. In this case, he has a worn copper sword. So hopefully our gnomes can take them and it doesn't leave anybody with a limb lost or anything like that. So right now we're going to unpause the game here in a few moments. And the game pauses every time an enemy is spotted just to give you a chance to react. And luckily these goblins are made short work of. And that allows our gnomes to just go on about their day. Everybody is gonna go back and grab some bandages if they were hurt in the fight. Nobody's injured, which is very nice. I thought that short sword was going to hack somebody's limb off, but luckily our gnomes were able to dodge and knock him out before he was able to accomplish anything with it. We're going to be setting up a designation for a stockpile of bandages right near our training grounds because we don't want our gnomes having to rush all the way back to the main stockpile. Because if they bleed all the way there, if the wound is significant enough, it will actually kill the gnome if they don't make it back in time. So by setting up that stockpile closer to the training grounds, closer to the front gate, our gnomes can just go there, pick up a bandage, apply it themselves if they're able to. And that one copper sword on the ground, we can actually smelt it, and it can be turned into some copper slivers, which can be then, if you get 10 of them, turned into a copper ingot. Which, unfortunately, we don't actually get into much blacksmithing in the near future, but that's okay. We're gonna tell the stockpile to pull from the general goods, that way all the bandages come here rather than just staying stocked there. Doesn't much matter what kind of crate we use, we're just setting it up so that there is a crate there to hold 32 bandages. And this is where I realized that the copper sword needs to be smelted. And then I realized that we don't have a smelter. So we go ahead and we set up the smelter's workshop to smelt any worn equipment that we come across. Set up everything pretty standard. We only have one type of stone for right now, so that's all we use. And we have somebody going to construct our crate over at our bandage stockpile, which is nice. Here I'm discussing how I want the groves to only be set up for collecting fruit from the fruit trees rather than chopped down, because that gives you actually more food if you don't chop down the trees. You get half as much food if you chop down the trees for logs as well as food. And I'm kind of looking around the fort trying to figure out why it's taking absolutely forever to get some of these chairs set up, but like I said, work doesn't go too quickly right now because nobody's specialized in this type of job. It's time to add some lights down here, and it takes me a little while to figure out exactly what kind of light structure I want. We're going to go with wall torches, and we actually apply the wall torches somewhere in the middle and some on the sides just to try and give as much light as possible to our gnomes. It doesn't really matter what type of light or what type of torch you use. It's more aesthetic reasons than anything else. Honestly, I've never really cared what type of what type of wood is used for a torch. It's mainly just user preference, really. But we set up these torches just to make sure that nothing spawns. I can't remember exactly what level mobs start to spawn, but I believe that they start spawning at least at -3, if not -5, which is just 3 or 5 levels below the ground floor. So right now we don't really have anything to worry about. The only thing we would have to worry about is if our gnomes don't clean up the stone or the dirt that they mine out, because then golems could spawn, which would be a very bad day for us right now. And taking a look around the kingdom, we only have one gnome idle, which I didn't actually realize. Most of the time I see 6 people in there sleeping. And our gnomes are over there getting busy in the Great Hall. It looks like they're playing musical chairs, just jumping back and forth like Mexican jumping beans, which is pretty hilarious. Right here I'm showing off the lighting effects of the game. And that's basically where you can see is what your gnomes can see at nighttime. It's something I really appreciate about this game is the trouble that RoboBob went through to try and add lighting effects that were a bit more realistic. And our lights are finally put down up in our mine, which is great because now our gnomes can actually see what they're doing. I would hate having to go into a mine blindly swinging a pickaxe. That would be absolutely terrible. And let's see. looking around. I'm not really sure what I was doing at this point. I might have been discussing how I wanted things to be laid out. Our carpenter is trying to create quite a few wood planks right now, and probably for all the chairs that we're making and the tables that we want as well. And like I said, it's really just one, my OCD, and two, the fact that it adds value to our kingdom. We get rid of those tables because they were orange wood, and I wanted a little bit of variety, plus we didn't have that many orange wood logs left. So we end up going with some pine tables here in just a moment whenever I decide to actually add them. But it looks like our kingdom is coming along quite nicely. I'm actually surprised that we've had it this easy so far, but I guess it's just the fact that my experience has paid off in many of the fallen kingdoms that I've had. It's quite nice when things go according to plan. I can just get things done the way that they need to get done. This is where I realize the tailor needs to actually be making bandages in order to keep a stockpile active. And there needs to be a set of bolt cloths created. Set it for 16, which is half of what the amount of bandages that I need, and that's just because I don't want my fort overrun with stocks right now, because that actually increases the value of your kingdom. So you really need to keep track of the amount of stocks that you're keeping. That way you don't start attracting bigger forces to attack you. Just 4 orange wood chairs left, which is rather nice. And it takes 4 planks to make a chair, so I'm just verifying that I actually have enough orange wood logs right now, because if I didn't, that would be quite upsetting. Moving along, the groves are really one of my highest priorities, because they actually, when the gnomes cut clippings from the trees, they actually add to their nimbleness, which is their ability to move faster. And that's why I like most of my farmers to be the ones that are dedicated to hauling when I'm able to, because that means that they can haul things much quicker than anyone else. Here I'm just explaining that when the groves actually produce logs and produce foods, the various pros and cons of that. Like I stated before, when you have fruit trees that are producing logs, it produces half as much food as it actually could. I think it's 5 logs and 5 fruit per season if you have them actually being chopped down. And here my gnome is finishing up the last of the chairs, so we're going to go ahead and set up the pine tables to give it a little bit of variety, make it look nice. Three on either side, so just gives the gnomes a place to sit down and enjoy their meal. Here I noticed that the worth of the Great Hall has gone up. We are just under 4,000 for our kingdom worth, unfortunately, which right now that means that if it were to come down to getting migrants or not, we probably wouldn't get very many more, unless the random number generator was just really gracious to us. Looking around the kingdom, I'd really like to expand it to where I'm encompassing that whole valley, so that we can not only increase the size of our farms and our groves, but if we set up the walls so that it's including the whole valley, we can leave the edge of the map to migrants or raiders or whoever comes. So we're not going to be taking the wall all the way out to the edge. We're going to try and work around the land, because I'm not a big fan of terraforming. in this game. I try to keep terraforming down to a minimum. There's a few things that, if there's a patch of grass hanging over a doorway or something like that, then I'll remove that patch of grass just because I wouldn't want roots hanging in my face as I walk out of the kingdom. The smelter's finally been set up, so here we go, and we tell them to automatically smelt ore items. That's just for any equipment that the goblins happen to bring. I'm gonna smelt that down into slivers, and eventually I will set that up to where it is being smelted into usable ingots that we can recreate. Here I'm just checking on the skills of the gnome carrying the worn copper sword to see if it's going to take him a while to actually smelt it. Our stockpile is actually accumulating all the bandages that we need, and I noticed that we have wool bandages, which I didn't realize that we started with wool bandages because we don't have any alpacas to actually generate wool. So apparently the bandages have been swapped from just being cotton to being wool now, the starting bandages. We got a few of the tables set up, which allows our gnomes to actually sit down and enjoy a meal whenever they bring food, or just sit down and have a little chat with one of their neighbors. Usually the ambassador will be in there and he'll be chatting up a gnome here and there. But everybody comes along, sits down, eats a sandwich, which now that we have goblin raiders, actually the goblins can provide a pretty decent source of meat for us, and that can be generated into sausages, and then those sausages used in making sandwiches. Looking around, we see that the mine is nicely lit up. Everybody's gotten all the stone and dirt from down there, which is very nice. Like I said, guys, I do apologize for having to do this voiceover. I really do not like voiceovers for the most part. It's just my particular style of recording. I prefer to do it as it's happening because then everything's pretty much off the cuff. There's no script. There's no, hey, this is what we're going to be covering today. I try to do it so that I don't know what's going to happen, so you can get my honest reaction. But unfortunately, technical difficulties did arise in this batch of recording, so for the next, this episode and then the next two will be voiceover episodes. So I do apologize, and I hope you guys stick with me through this. I promise the next batch I will make sure that everything's working beforehand. That way we can isolate the problem and make sure it doesn't happen again. But enough about that, let's get back to the game. We're just kind of looking around right now, noticing that there's quite a bit of empty space in our kingdom, which we'll actually address at some point. Speeding the game up, because I noticed that we're going at a dreadfully slow pace right here. Everything looks pretty good. We got a few gnomes that remain idle, which is a bit unfortunate, but right here we start to actually add some nice decorative walls to our fort. We're going with water engraved walls, and the reason is because on the water engraved walls it actually looks like there's writing on the wall, which, again, this is my imagination running away with me, but I like to imagine that it's the story of our gnomedom, I guess you could say. Like where we came from, how we came to be here in Devil Dagger, what brought us here, the stories of ogres coming in the night and stealing our children that drove us to seek out a new kingdom. And here I'm just deciding what type of walls to go with, and I choose decorative stone walls for the corners because I just happen to like the way that those look. And these corners, fortunately, are pretty easy to set up because the outside can be worked on, or rather the walls can be worked on from the outside of the kingdom. but we do have to mine away the corners on some of the walls in order to access those corners, because in the generation of what your Great Hall is worth, the corners actually do count, so you do want to go ahead and mine away those corners so you can set those corner pieces up. And that's what we decided to do here. We picked, like I said, decorative stone walls for all the corners. Just get those set up. And for the middle sections, I actually like to go with a different type, just to give our gnomes something other than the same old monotonous view that they're getting all the time. And we eventually go with carved walls, and that's because they kind of look like they are arches, and so I don't know, I like to imagine that, you know, there's a nice little picture or something on them in the middle section between the two arches. And to me, it looks really nice. I can't remember which version it was that added that. It might have been 0.9.17 or 0.16. But I got really excited about the addition of those walls because it got really old looking at the same type of walls over and over again. But I'm just explaining how the walls can actually be lowered so you can see what type of wall gives you what type of floor pattern here. Because each wall does have a different type of floor pattern than what it looks like on as a wall. The carved wall actually looks like an embossed square rather than, you know, arches. The water looks pretty much the same. It looks like there's writing on the ground rather than on the wall. Decorative stone walls, rather than looking like Lego bricks, it looks like a tiled floor. And we're finally getting some more of the Great Hall walls. Wow, that's really hard to say. Great Hall walls set up, and that'll increase our kingdom worth further, which will make our fort look that much more attractive for our gnomes, which is very nice, I gotta say. Looks like we're keeping a decent stockpile of stone right now. It's keeping the laborers pretty busy with how much stone they have to cut, but it's all for the greater good of the colony, I like to say anyway. I actually decide that at the completion of the Great Hall that I'm going to end this episode, and that's basically just so you guys can see that what my initial Great Hall usually consists of in a typical kingdom. Plus, I like to keep the episodes at about 20 minutes. This one runs a little bit longer than that, but I'm okay with that. That just means basically I have to do a little bit more work on the back end, but nothing to concern yourselves about. Bobipsy is a pretty good miner, so that's nice. It means that Bobipsy can create stone blocks much quicker than an average gnome. I'm not sure why I keep jumping down to the mine for some odd reason, I guess. Oh, this is where I was wondering about why the left side didn't get as much stone as the right side. Unfortunately, just the way that the map generated it, we got much more marble, so we'll have to be expanding the mine in the right to go right rather than to the left, so it won't be even, but I'm okay with that. It's a mine. We're not going to see it for the most part. What I would like to do is actually replace that stone floor down at the bottom. Getting closer and closer to completing our Great Hall. The gnomes are bringing some of the last blocks that need to be brought in. And we can actually add the last of the corner blocks, or rather the decorative stone blocks. give us a pretty decent value Great Hall, which will help us push us over that 5,000 milestone. That helps us attract a few more gnomes to the kingdom. Unfortunately, right now, with nobody being specialized, I know I keep mentioning specialization. That's because in a later episode, I do actually set up the professions to be specialized. And we got one more stone block that needs to be set up, which somebody's actually running around to the outside of the kingdom to set that up now, but he sees a honey badger, which you do not want to mess with a honey badger. There's actually a military squadron that's called the Honey Badger, and I appreciate the humor in their slogan. If you don't know what their slogan is, go look it up. It's pretty hilarious. But that is going to be just about it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I'm really sorry for the fact that I had to do a voiceover, but it was either that or lose all the footage that I recorded up until this point. Now, I guessed that you guys would appreciate a voiceover more than you would appreciate losing about an hour of in-game footage. So I do hope you join me for the next one. Leave a like, a dislike, comments. I would love to have some interaction with you guys. But from me and all of the gnomes here in Devil Dagger, y'all have a great one.